Canada is a country that is proud to stand up for human rights at home and abroad. When gross violations of these rights occur, we have a responsibility to collect the facts and, based on what we learn, to respond. It has been nearly 2 months since the vile, premeditated murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and the explanations offered to date by Saudi Arabia lack both consistency and credibility. Since the world first learned of the horrific murder in Turkey, Canada has been working closely with our allies and partners, including Turkey, to coordinate a response. Today, I am announcing that Canada is imposing targeted sanctions under the Justice for Victims of Corrupt Foreign Officials Act, or Magnitsky legislation, against 17 individuals who, in our government's opinion, are responsible for or complicit in the extrajudicial and extraterritorial killing of Mr. Khashoggi. These sanctions freeze the Canadian assets of these individuals. These individuals are also inadmissible to Canada, pursuant to the Immigrant and Refugee Protection Act. The murder of Jamal Khashoggi is abhorrent and represents an unconscionable attack on freedom of expression and freedom of the press. We continue to call for a credible and independent international investigation. This case is not closed. Those responsible for Mr. Khashoggi's death must be held to account and must face justice. Le Canada est fier de défendre les droits de la personne à la maison et à l'étranger. Lorsque des violations flagrantes de ces droits se produisent, nous avons la responsabilité de recueillir les faits et,
gather the
en
facts,
fonction de ce que nous apprenons,
and based on what we're learning, to respond. It's been over 2 months now that the premeditated and brutal assassination of journalist Khashoggi in Istanbul has happened, and the explanations that were given to this day by Saudi Arabia has no coherence and no credibility. Since the world has found out of the horrible situation that happened in Turkey, Canada has worked in close partnership with our allies and partners, including Turkey, in order to coordinate our response. Today, I'm announcing that Canada is imposing targeted sanctions based on the Magnitsky Law or Magnitsky Act against 17 individuals who are, based on, in our government's view, are responsible or partners in on these acts on Mr. Khashoggi. These actions will freeze the actives of those individuals in Canada, and they are also forbidden to travel and stay in Canada based on the law on immigration and protection of refugees. The murder of Jamal Khashoggi is odious and is an inadmissible violation of freedom of expression and freedom of the press. We will continue to ask for a credible and independent inquiry by an international group. This case is not over. Those responsible of the death of Mr. Khashoggi must face justice. And the name of individuals of those sanctioned, we can give them to you. Thank you. Why not announcing measures that would be more powerful, as in ceasing sale of weapons to Saudi Arabia, or stop contracts? It's more symbolical than anything today. No, I don't agree with you. What you're saying. It's that it's only symbolical. Those are strong measures, important measures. And I think it's important for us in Canada to take those measures for the reasons that I've said. Now, this is really important for us, for Canada, to be clear about the importance of human rights in the world. Now, regarding trade and weapon sales between Canada and Saudi Arabia, well, we continue to work with our allies. We continue to ask for an investigation that would be independent on the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. And during our investigation, for new permits or exportation permits to Saudi Arabia are closed. I want to underline also that it's important for us to do all that we're doing on a basis of facts, to have an investigation that is serious, and it's important for us also to work with our allies. And I want to underline one thing that I've said already, which is that for Canada, this is not a closed case. We will continue to insist for an investigation that is transparent and credible on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. It is absolutely necessary, and maybe I can add another thing, and it is for us also. What is happening in Yemen is really serious. Canada is asking for or demanding a ceasefire. This is really important to underline this as well.
I'm wondering how Canada can handle that dynamic, or will handle that dynamic of the fact that Saudi Crown Prince himself will be at the G20.
We obviously are aware of the membership of the G20 and who will be here. Some of the close allies with whom we have been coordinating our work following the murder of Jamal Khashoggi are here as well, and we have been working closely with them. This will be an opportunity to continue that work and to do it face to face.
What about arms sales? We're still selling them. We're selling them armored vehicles. I mean, a lot of Canadians go, "What are we doing? Sanctioning some individuals, but still selling them armored vehicles."
Canada takes our arms exports and our responsibility to ensure that our values around human rights are upheld very, very seriously. When it comes to arms sales to Saudi Arabia, in view of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, in view of the fact that the explanations offered to date by Saudi Arabia lack credibility and coherence, and in view of the continued war in Yemen, we are reviewing our arms sales to Saudi Arabia. And let me emphasize, because I think this is important for Canadians to be clear about, during this period of review, no new arms export permits are being issued. I also want to be clear that in the past, we have suspended already issued export permits, and as the Prime Minister has said, that is action that we have taken in the past and we stand prepared to take in the future.
Minister, you keep calling for an independent and transparent investigation. By who are you thinking that should be done? And how long are you willing to wait for that investigation to materialize?
That's a really good question, and we have been working very closely, first of all, with Turkey, where this horrible murder took place, and we're very aware of the fact that this murder happened on the territory of a NATO ally, and that extraterritorial element is significant to us, and we have been discussing that with the Turks. As I said, we are not satisfied with the explanations that Saudi Arabia has offered. And it is very important, we believe, for Canada and for Canadians, that there be a clear and transparent and credible investigative process. That's something that we have been working on and talking about with our allies very intensively. And this G7 meeting will be an opportunity for us to continue exploring how exactly to do that. Katie hasn't asked me a question.
Can I ask two? I'm going to ask two questions, if I may. My first question is: the news release makes no mention of Mohammed bin Salman. Does that mean the Canadian government does not think he has any sort of responsibility in this matter? Number two, what is the status of the USMCA, and are you going to be signing it tomorrow?
So we are clear that the 17 people who we have sanctioned, we have looked very closely into their involvement in this terrible murder, and it is the clear opinion of our government that they were either directly involved in or complicit in the murder. That is why we feel confident imposing these sanctions on them, which is a very serious measure. We are also clear that this case is not closed as far as Canada is concerned. We are clear that a credible and transparent investigation has not yet happened, and it needs to happen. So the work continues, but this is an important step. And I do want to emphasize, as I think is well known by Canadians, that our government has been directly in touch with Turkey. The director of CSIS has been to Turkey, and information has been directly shared with us.
So do you think he's involved?
We believe that in naming people and in saying, in the view of the Government of Canada, that someone is responsible for something so serious and so odious, it's very important to gather all the facts. It's very important to act and to speak only on the basis of real certainty. These are not steps that we take lightly. They are not accusations that we can make lightly. But again, I do want to emphasize this case is not closed as far as Canada is concerned, both in terms of our continued work to determine for ourselves the facts, in terms of our work with our allies to seek a coordinated response, in terms of our work to seek an investigation which is credible and transparent for the sake of the world, and in terms of our review of our own arms exports to Saudi Arabia. Now, second question was about the new NAFTA.
Yeah, you're calling it the new NAFTA, not USMCA. And the U.S. is saying on the record, yes, they're going to sign. Mexico is saying on the record, yes, they're going to sign. Canada is not. Why, and what's the holdup? What's the status?
So our objective has always been to sign this agreement on November 30th, and we are on track to hit that objective. As is always the case, I think some people here were on the plane for the CETA signing. As is always the case with these agreements, there are always details to be finalized, and we are very hard at work doing that. We've already, since we arrived here in Buenos Aires, been in touch with both the Americans and the Mexicans, and we'll be working with them this afternoon. En ce qui concerne notre accord du libre-échange avec
free
les
trade agreement with the United States and Mexico.
Le but pour le Canada
the target for Canada has always been to sign a new deal by November 30th.
Et notre travail continue.
And our work continues
Être prête à faire
in order to be ready to do so.
C'est du travail acharné.
It is hard work.
Il y a une énormément de détails.
There are lots of details that needs to be finalized, including translation and whatnot.
Même aujourd'hui,
today,
du moment qu'on a arrivé ici,
from the moment we've arrived here
en Argentin,
in Argentina,
on a déjà
we've already started
continué le travail, mais
to continue
ici, avec
the
nos
work
partenaires
and continue the
américains
job
et
with our
mexicains.
American and Mexican partners.
Minister, you're just hours away from signing this agreement. What is the issues that you don't seem to be able to agree on?
Oh, you know, as I said, Joyce, we really, our objective has always been to sign this agreement on November 30th. We are very much on track to do that. These agreements are massive, and a vast number of technical details need to be scrubbed and wrapped up. The fact that this is an agreement in 3 languages adds to the level of technical complexity, and it is on that level that we're just being sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and I think that Canadians expect us to do that.
So why today, why did you decide today as you arrived in Argentina for the G20 to impose these sanctions on these 17 Saudi nationals? This can't be a coincidence.
As I said in my statement, our government believes, and I feel this is a view widely shared by Canadians, that human rights need to be an essential element of our foreign policy. We also believe that in taking a serious step, like imposing Magnitsky sanctions, it's important to do all of our due diligence to get all of our facts straight. When Canada speaks, we want to be sure we have everything right. We here in Argentina will have the opportunity to be meeting with many of the partners with whom we have been working on this very difficult issue. And it's important that Canada is able to go into these meetings having been clear about our stand when it comes to the truly vile murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and when it comes to taking a direct step using the legislation we have to act on accountability for some of the people responsible for this.
What speaks directly to the Prince during this G20 meeting?
We are still finalizing the agenda for the ministers and the Prime Minister here.
What makes you confident that these sanctions will have teeth or matter to Saudi Arabia at all? Because we saw that there was significant blowback in response to a tweet during the summertime. What makes you think that Saudi Arabia cares at all about sanctions against 17 nationals?
Well, I think your question contains its own answer. I think that we've already seen in many different areas that what Canada says is noticed in the world, and Canada's voice has real weight. Canada is rightly seen as a country that stands for the rule of law, a country which is careful and thoughtful, a country that does not act rashly, a country that takes actions based on a thorough investigation, a thorough factual basis, and at the end of the day, a country that is prepared to stand up for human rights. And another important element here is to stand up for journalists and for freedom of expression. So I absolutely believe that Canada's action will have an impact, will be noticed around the world, and certainly I've already been in touch, even today, with some of our allies who wanted information about what we were doing.
On Ukraine, this one on Ukraine. Does the Kurdish incident change anything for Canada, particularly with regards to the question of whether Canada should supply lethal assistance or arms to Ukraine?
Another very good question. As you know, we do have a defense cooperation agreement with Ukraine. Under Operation Unifier, we have Canadian men and women in uniform training in Ukraine. And we have included Ukraine on our list of countries to which weapons can be sold. These are all important steps. They're all important signs of our support for Ukraine, its sovereignty, its territorial integrity. I spoke with Pavlo Klimkin, the Ukrainian foreign minister, late on Sunday night, and we are in very close touch with our Ukrainian allies. We're in very close touch with our G7 allies on this issue. I might point people to the fact that there will be a NATO Foreign Ministers Summit meeting next week in Brussels. Ukraine is on the agenda, and we are, even as we speak, working very closely with our allies, with Ukraine, to make sure that that is a robust conversation, and that working together we are able to support Ukraine and to speak out, as Canada has already done, against the horrible capture of these Ukrainian sailors, against the seizure of these vessels. We are very aware that we can be most effective in Ukraine, partly by being very well informed, and we have a close relationship with Ukraine, which is appreciated by our partners. They turn to Canada often for information on what's happening. But we also really appreciate that we can be most effective when it comes to Ukraine when we work closely in real collaboration with our partners at the G7 and very much at NATO.